He won't power down. He's like Ultron. He just keeps going. Every day, it's something crazier than the next. I made a list. This is all in the last 2 months. I made you a quick list. I will run through it. He paved over the Rose Garden. He's building a golden ballroom at the White House. He's planning a UFC fight at the White House. He cut off Kamala Harris's Secret Service protection. He named himself host of the Kennedy Center.
You know, the authoritarian, the demagogue, it goes away when they go away, and he will go away. And we will, and they don't have anybody that's as charismatic as him. He's charismatic. There's no taking that away from him. He's a television star. He is. He's charismatic. I mean, I don't agree with him at all on anything, but, you know, he was famous from a television.
Trump's presidency has become such a circus that even seasoned entertainers like Jimmy Kimmel and George Clooney can't resist turning it into comedy gold. And why not? Every day feels like a parody written by interns who gave up halfway through. Kimmel has made a career out of mocking absurdity, while Clooney plays the Hollywood poster boy for suave criticism. Together, they treat Trump's time in office like a blooper reel too long for television.
And I think unjustly, this puts them at risk. The President of the United States made it very clear he wants to see me and the hundreds of people who work here fired from our jobs. Our leader celebrates Americans losing their livelihoods because he can't take a joke. He was...
I mean, personally, being targeted by the administration.
Sure, everybody worries about it, but, you know, if you spend your life worrying about things, then you won't do things. You know, we like everybody have a family, and we have a life, and we have, and we try to, you know, live and do the things as the best example for our kids.
If you're enjoying this video, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon. The roast begins with the spectacle of Trump's public appearances. Kimmel doesn't even need to write punchlines. Trump supplies them himself, lumbering across stages, waving like a broken marionette and pausing for applause that always feels offbeat. Clooney piles on, saying no actor in history has worked harder to miss their mark. He calls Trump's stage presence less presidential and more like a desperate audition that somehow made it past round one because the judges were too polite to laugh in his face.
He's going to be a factor for a while. It's so funny because, you know, he was just this knucklehead. I knew him before he was... you know, a president. He was just a guy who was chasing girls. You know, every time he went out, he'd come over and be like, "What's the name of that girl?" You know, that's all he was. And the idea that there's this whole group of people that, you know, that they think he's the champion of, which he certainly can't stand in real life. But, you know, he's gonna play this out for a while, and we'll see where we go with it.
And then there's the hair. Always the hair. Kimmel treats it as a supporting character in the political saga, a golden tumbleweed that seems ready to escape with the next gust of wind. Clooney, with his salt and pepper dignity, contrasts it with Trump's endless spray and comb routine, which screams insecurity louder than any policy speech. The joke isn't just that the hair is bad, it's that the President of the United States spends more time perfecting a gravity-defying swirl than preparing for global summits.
You know, there's a rumor making the rounds this weekend that Trump was dead because he hadn't been in front of a camera for a few days. That's how much he's in front of a camera. When we don't see him there, we assume he must be dead. And also, he has mysterious bruising on his hand, which they tried to cover up with makeup. And this cover-up's even sloppier than the Epstein one. How can anyone let him go out like this? I mean, like he was spackled. He had to have done that himself, right? Looks great, sir. No one will notice a thing. The White House claims the reason for these bruises and his big fat elephant ankles is he suffers from a condition known as chronic venous insufficiency, which in layman's terms means he's got a very small venus. He's got an insufficient...
Kimmel has a field day with Trump's obsession with rallies. No matter what crisis is unfolding, he clings to his crowds like a struggling comic refusing to leave the stage. Clooney adds that it feels like watching a washed-up lounge act begging for standing ovations from the same tired routine. The jokes aren't cruel, they're accurate. Trump's rallies are emotional life support where applause fills the holes left by his crumbling credibility.
Able to squeeze Colbert out of CBS, then he turned his sights on me. and now he's openly rooting for NBC to fire Jimmy Fallon and Seth Meyers and the hundreds of Americans who work for their shows who don't make millions of dollars. And I hope that if that happens, or if there's even any hint of that happening, you will be 10 times as loud as you were this week. We have to speak out against this.
Policies become comedy fodder too. Kimmel skewers Trump's obsession with walls, bans and tariffs by painting him as a home improvement host gone rogue. It's like watching someone try to build a fence around the entire world with duct tape and ego. Clooney chimes in, reminding everyone how often these big ideas collapse under their own contradictions. Yet Trump still sells them as revolutionary breakthroughs.
Center honors. He went to Alaska to bend over for Putin. He sent military tanks into Washington, D.C. He said the Smithsonian focuses too much on how bad slavery was. He called India and Norway to tell them to nominate him for a Nobel Prize. And he cut off funding for pediatric brain cancer research for children. You would think a person who himself has the brain of a child would be in favor of funding pediatric brain care research.
When it comes to global affairs, the jokes practically write themselves. Trump's meetings with world leaders look less like diplomacy and more like a family reunion where nobody actually invited him. Kimmel compares the photo ops to hostage situations where everyone else looks desperate to escape. Clooney sharpens the blow, saying presidents are supposed to project stability, not force allies to co-star in slapstick sketches. Even the economy, Trump's favorite talking point, gets roasted. Kimmel reminds the audience how he paraded around like he personally invented prosperity, as if confidence alone could suspend reality. And of course the infamous late-night tweets. Kimmel calls them drunk texts from the most powerful man alive, except instead of regretting them, Trump doubles down.
And it's not just comedy. He's gunning for our journalists too. He's suing them, he's bullying them. Over the weekend, his foxy friend Pete Hegseth announced a new policy that requires journalists with Pentagon press credentials to sign a pledge promising not to report information that hasn't been explicitly authorized for release. That includes unclassified information. They want to pick and choose what the news is. I know that's not as interesting as muzzling a comedian, but it's so important to have a free press, and it is nuts that we aren't paying more attention to it.
Clooney compares the tweets to a soap opera unfolding in real time, except the lead actor writes his own terrible dialogue. Rambling, misspelled, impulsive, and yet powerful enough to rattle markets. Then comes the desperate hunger for flattery. Kimmel jokes about how Trump surrounds himself with sycophants trained to clap on cue. Clooney goes further, pointing out that no serious leader should need daily affirmations just to function. Together they frame Trump's presidency as a therapy session gone wrong, with a patient who insists he's cured but still demands constant reassurance. Legal troubles. Kimmel calls the White House the busiest courtroom in America. Clooney twists the knife. This so-called master of business spends more time defending his empire than building it.
I didn't think people would vote for someone who was so deeply flawed. I know Donald Trump. That's the thing, is people, I have his phone number in my phone book. He was the guy that came to the bars and asked me about which cocktail waitress was single. That's who he was.
This is back in the 90s.
Well, not that long, no, back in the 2000s, quite honestly. And so there's this part of you that just goes, well, that guy should listen. But I was wrong, and he was. And our democracy, I believe, paid a price, certainly around the world.
Even Trump's relationship with his own party isn't spared. Kimmel likens it to a dysfunctional marriage where everyone pretends to smile for the cameras but secretly wants a divorce. Clooney agrees, noting how politicians look trapped in a hostage situation, bound to a man who demands loyalty but rarely gives it back. Then come the superlatives. Everything is the biggest and greatest. Kimmel ridicules his fangirling over dictators with awkward handshakes, while Clooney highlights the danger of these cozy alignments. It's not just jokes, it's mockery, with teeth, pointing out how dangerous his behavior really is.
Christy?
Well, Mr. President, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to work for you. Mr. President, I invite you to see your big, beautiful face on a banner in front of the Department of Labor.
Thank you for saving college football, by the way. We're all very grateful.
You are the single finest candidate since this Nobel Award was ever talked about. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, I want you to know, sometimes when I watch you striding across the White House lawn so confidently, with so much masculinity, I'll admit it, I get sexually aroused. Thank you for breathing life back into my once slumbering penis.
Environmental policy is another playground. Kimmel jokes about a president who treats science like a suggestion he can bargain away. Clooney compares it to tossing buckets of water from a sinking ship while insisting it's unsinkable. The comedy lies in the gap between reality and Trump's fake confidence. Healthcare gets its turn too. Kimmel mocks the phantom replacement plans that never appeared, comparing them to mythical creatures. And Clooney adds the absurdity of the most powerful man alive still playing the underdog. It's like Superman whining through his whole movie about how hard it is to be Superman.
Look, I never imagined I would be in a situation like this. I barely paid attention in school. But one thing I did learn from Lenny Bruce and George Carlin and Howard Stern is that a government threat to silence a comedian the president doesn't like is anti-American. That's anti-American. And I am so glad we have some solidarity on that from the right and the left and from those in the middle like Joe Rogan.
The pandemic brought the darkest material. Kimmel lampoons the press conferences that felt more like game shows where Trump tried to project calm while spewing half-baked nonsense. Clooney doesn't let up, calling the response a tragic mix of denial and spectacle. Family nepotism. Kimmel mocks the endless parade of relatives drafted into government roles as if it were constitutional. Ratings obsession. Kimmel skewers the idea that crowd size matters more than policy, while Clooney compares it to an actor bragging about how many people wandered into the wrong theater. Together, they expose Trump as a man addicted to validation, unable to tell popularity from progress.
Why would they want someone back who does so poorly, who's not funny, and who puts the network in jeopardy by playing 99% positive Democrat garbage? Who puts the network in jeopardy? You hear that? There's the threat again. This time straight from FCC Biscuit's mouth. He goes, he says, I think we're going to test ABC out on this. Let's see how we do. Last time I went after them, they gave me $16 million. This one sounds even more lucrative. A true bunch of losers. Only Donald Trump would try to prove he wasn't threatening ABC by threatening ABC. And you almost have to feel sorry for the people who work for him, who try to clean up the messes. They've been bending over backwards to say, oh, he never.
Legacy becomes its own punchline. Clooney imagines a mockumentary where future classrooms won't need textbooks, just a highlight reel of Trump's blunders on loop. Picture students solemnly learning about Washington and Lincoln, then watching Trump rambling, flailing, and declaring imaginary victories. His presidential library. Clooney suggests it won't hold books but endless TV screens replaying his embarrassments. Gift shops would sell red caps and gold pens that run out halfway through, just like his policy promises. Kimmel adds an exhibit where visitors can try tweeting blindfolded, producing results indistinguishable from Trump's midnight rants. Instead of statues, his real monument might be an amusement park of ridicule.
Trump is a big fan of yours, but he posted in July, now fake movie actor George Clooney is getting into the act. He's turned on Crooked Joe. What does Clooney know about anything? Should get out of politics and go back to television. Movies never really worked for him.
I will if he does.
He doesn't know that movies are fake, does he?
I don't think so. Yeah.
Even Trump's name gets roasted. Kimmel says it will live on not as a family crest, but as a warning label for reckless decisions. Clooney imagines Trump becoming shorthand for self-inflicted chaos like Waterloo became for defeat. On TV, Kimmel jokes his presidency will be remembered less as an era and more as a botched series finale. Clooney adds that even bad soap operas at least try to wrap up loose ends, while Trump left cliffhanger nobody wanted resolved. In the end, they frame his legacy not as leadership but as comedy currency, proof that unchecked ego turns power into parody.